Hi, welcome to the Veterinary Ledger Podcast. We dive into business of the veterinary medicine. Each week, we explore strategies, insights, and stories that help practice owners, managers, and teams run a thriving, efficient, and profitable practice without losing sight of the pets and the people they care for. Whether you're looking for practical tips, expert advice, or a fresh perspective on veterinary business, you have come to the right place. And I am happy today to introduce Drew Bartholomew. He is the president of Vetcelerator, which is just a litany of things that you do. You know better than I do, so please tell us all a little bit about you and Vetcelerator.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for having me. A longtime listener, first-time guest. I am Drew Bartholomew. I'm the president of Vetcelerator. Vetcelerator is a buying purchase organization. You've heard a couple of those words, GPO, but also a marketing agency supporting practice growth through web management, web design, advertising, recruiting, social media, etc. So we like to focus on profit saving through the GPO and growth through the marketing work.
Do those two go together, or did you put them together?
I don't know why they wouldn't, and I think they should. And when people ask me that question, which I get very often, I just say, why wouldn't they go together? GPOs tend to want to support practice growth, but they're usually looking at it from a purchasing and maybe operations or education or training angle. But clinics need new clients, period. And they're starting to realize that maybe now more than ever, because the last 5 years were a little different than the next 5 years. So I think they go together great. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us how you got into this.
The short version is I love finance. I love economics. I managed money for a living, but that didn't feel very tangible. So I went to business school, and then I wanted to become more entrepreneurial. And then I found a firm in the space that looked interesting, and it was in veterinary medicine, which was completely different, which only made me want it a little bit more. And I joined that firm, and that led me to ultimately leading Vetcelerator.
Okay. Did you say when you applied for the job, did you say, I grew up with dogs? I have a so I'm qualified for this job?
That's right. Yeah, no, I don't think I did. And maybe that's why they wanted to work with me, because I said I like to work with numbers, and I became the numbers guy around the house.
I do. If no one has received an email from you yet, they should, because I love at the bottom it says, "Can I pet your dog?" which I think is just really opening and fresh for our industry, right? My laptop says, "Say hi," tell your dog I said hi. So I think that, like, as an industry, we all know that I'm never looking at the person in front of me. I'm always trying to pet their dog. So I love that you got that about us, and that I bet you want to say hi to the dog.
I mean, I was hanging out with my parents the other day, and this was unknown to me, but my dad carries treats in his pocket. And we were at a hotel, and there was a dog in the elevator, and he asked the owner if he could provide them a treat, and then he pulled it out of his pocket. My dad doesn't work in animal health. He just carries treats in his pocket in case he sees a dog. That's the guy that raised me. So I don't know what that means.
It was there. There was a kernel there from the beginning. Oh, I love that story. I need more pockets. Okay. All right. So I've known you for a little while now. What I feel from you is genuine. I feel like you are not new to this industry, but maybe not, you didn't grow up like some of us did, cleaning up poop for years and working your way up. But I feel like you genuinely care about helping this industry, which I think is unique, right? It's not a money grab. It feels sincere when you say these things. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess how can you not? Do I watch the Vikings play every Sunday and then call my dad to bond over shared suffering? Yeah, I mean, I do. So maybe there's a little bit there. But when I first joined, it was 2021. I met people like Christian or Rachel or Lisa, and they were all new practice owners that took the leap to doing it themselves. And they were looking for me to help them solve some of those challenges that they were facing. So I think, how can you not be infected by that?
Well, there's still lots of people who are just out there for the money.
And I'm not saying that corporations are bad. I guess I'm saying that I kind of love the independent spirit.
I like that. And I feel like from you, like, you'd rather help more people at a lower cost and be able to spread the knowledge and spread the wealth in a way, rather than have just a handful of picked ones that are paying the premium?
Yeah, I mean, one of our values is transparency. So I do want to uncover, what I see or what we see as a firm in the industry and let people know about it. So we're very open and we like to try to uncover what is oftentimes mysteries in either marketing or purchasing behaviors.
Man, because I feel that people ask me all the time, at least a couple times a week, people are asking me about buying groups. And my default answer is usually find out who works with who you work with and work with them, right? Because I don't know all of the ins and outs of all in the buying groups. I feel like they hold those cards close to the vest until you've signed on. So it's hard for me to say, like, oh, you use this brand, let's go with this group. So when we say buying group, what does that mean to a veterinary practice?
Yeah, and I might have mentioned this at the top, but there's different names for these things. We might call them buying groups. We might call them group purchase organizations. You might hear the acronym GPO. We're generally talking about the same thing. So the idea is pretty simple. GPOs, buying groups, they're there to help small businesses reduce costs and streamline procurement. Procurement meaning the process of adding vendors. And the goal here is because they're leveraging collective purchasing power. And we can get into like industry structure or, why this needs to be the case and why suppliers may have power. But uh, a member of a GPO is joining a bunch of other small practices to access pre-negotiated contracts or agreements with suppliers, which should allow them to save money, but also save time on procurement.
Okay. Does that mean that put me on the spot here. Does that mean that the bigger buying groups have the better buying power?
It's funny. I don't know if that's actually true. And I can't speak to everyone's deal, right? But I think it comes down to alignment. And so some people might, employ like a big tent strategy, a lot of vendors. Some people might do less better, fewer vendors. And it really comes down to how well do the members of that buying group actually commit to the strategy that they're signing up for? Because that's actually going to do more than just pure how many members does a group have. So think compliance in this case.
So if I use the majority of the services being offered, I'm going to get more out of it.
If you and everyone else does, yeah. I mean, it's not just you, but you got to be a part of the bigger cause.
Okay. What are some misconceptions that people think of when they join a buying group? What do you see?
Okay, so I'm not going to give you the answer, but I'm going to ask a question. And this is answering your question, but I'm not going to take it a step further. So bear with me. So I think the biggest misconception is this question: who is the customer of a GPO? And boy, that should be a really easy question, right? But let me tell you, it's kind of a thinker. So for fun, I'm just going to give you two options, and then you can, or you, the listener, can ask that question of yourself. So is the customer of a buying group the supplier or the practice? And that's a very important question. And the answer of it is very, very, very important.
That's huge, right? That's a head scratcher.
Yeah.
Who gives us any? I mean, then we should think, okay, well, the practices that should be who's important. But how do we noodle in to figure out what that means to the group itself?
I think so. As you're looking at GPO options, maybe I'll give you a couple of questions, and that might help you think about it. So the first question should be, what vendors are a part of your purchasing group? The second should be, how do I access the discounts and or rebates from these vendors? So there might be discounts, there might be rebates, there might be quantities that you need, there might be compliance, there might be minimums, there might be a lot of things. So you just got to figure that out. This is an important question. How do you select the vendors that are a part of the purchasing group? It might actually help you answer that question above, which is, who's the customer? What's the due diligence process like, for example? Then it's a couple easy ones. What are the total costs of you joining? That should be straightforward, but maybe follow up that question with, does that ever change? Is it based on volume? Is there any other kind of levers? And then the final one would probably just be, are there other services in the GPO that I can take advantage of? And what do those look like? And going back to a cost question, do those have a cost? Are they included? Mm-hmm. So there's probably 5 or so questions, maybe 6, that I think will determine the answer to who the customer really is.
Okay. Do you find that the driver for who you sign up with, it seems to be cost of the membership, or is it more savings?
If you put the two together, it's value. So I think it should be value. I don't know if it is or not. Sometimes the process for joining a purchasing group is really easy. Cost nothing, for example, or, cost a de minimis amount that you don't actually see. Other times the costs of joining are quite substantial. And you can think about the strategy behind that. Something that's free maybe doesn't have as much buy-in, whereas something that is really expensive maybe is trying to provoke the members to get involved. And that kind of demonstrates itself by the member base.
Okay, which is great lead into my next question because I talk to so many people who are like, we're part of 3 or 4 buying groups. Like, is that the sweet spot? Should you look for one that's really good for you? Should you diversify and just kind of like throw your nut out and be part of everything?
There's a short answer, which is it depends. And
Thanks.
there's a longer answer, which is let's examine what's happening economically when a clinic is joining a GPO. And that's that they're trading compliance, loyalty, if you want to call it that, for pricing power to the benefit of both the suppliers and themselves. And the GPO is really facilitating that arrangement. So if you're part of multiple GPOs, it may be difficult for you to actually trade the thing you're trying to trade, which is loyalty. If you're part of everyone, who are you loyal to? And it might cause you to lose your pricing advantage, which is what the supplier is bringing to the table.
Okay. Do you think responsibility falls to the practice or to the group to stay on top of this is your cost, this is your rebate, this is what you could be doing, this is what you're missing out on?
Oh, man. There was a really cool VHMA survey that came out last year. And I think part of that answers the question. And so in the survey, they surveyed, I think it ended up being like 125 practices, and they did the survey 5 years prior. So we got to look at the differences between the two. And here's some highlights. So roughly 80% of practices were part of at least one GPO. And then the next question was to list which GPO they're a part of. And many of the respondents listed names of companies that are actually not even GPOs. So I think 56% said Vetco, which
Oh,
certainly has GPO elements, right? Like Vetco reduces search costs, but they don't negotiate agreements with suppliers on your behalf. So that was interesting. And then we go to the next part, which is who tracks how much you're saving. 80% of the respondents said the GPO does it for me, which, yeah, that makes sense. They should, right? How much are you saving is the very next question. 37% said I have no idea. So I think to answer your question on like who should help own compliance, alignment, whatever terms you want to use for that, I think it's a team sport. But I'll tell you the other thing, and the survey kind of touches on it. Like, what is that survey telling me? That survey is telling me that transparency is low.
yeah.
It's telling me that probably a practice manager is filling out the survey and actually was probably just told by the owner or the head veterinarian to go and lower that number. And that number was the cost of goods sold. But they were given no tools or resources or even knowledge that they were part of a buying group to go and influence that number. And so they're going to be told to go lower a number that they have no idea how it's made. And that's tough. So buying groups should be a partner in that cause, but it doesn't work without strong clinic teams that are aligned and have transparent processes.
I would think it would be better for the buying group to say, like, hey, look at what I'm saving you, right? This is the measurable month over month, year over year. This is your return on investment, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, and I think most can actually give you that number. Some might even be able to give you that number with specificity. That is a tough word, but other times it's really hard to calculate. So an estimate is probably there. Rebates, it shouldn't be hard to calculate because the rebate check is made from understanding the purchases. But in other cases where just plain list price discounts are being employed, tracking becomes a little bit harder, I would say, without really, really strong data. And the people that have that data, they keep it tight.
A bit nebulous, right? Okay, Vet Cove, right? That's a huge talking point. Can people be part of a buying group and still shop Vet Cove?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And in fact, Vetcove helps with some other good behaviors for inventory management. Like being a part of a buying group shouldn't mean that you only can work with one distributor, for example. Good inventory management is having a primary and secondary. Vetcove allows that kind of facilitation to happen. But going back to the alignment, the primary should be the primary, right? We should buy most of the stuff from them, and then we should actually just fill in, maybe call it the 80-20 rule with a secondary provider, but you still need that. And those relationships are important. And Vetcove kind of helps you manage all that.
Okay, so I wouldn't have to give that up by
No.
joining one. Okay. What red flags would I look for?
Oh, I think I thought about this. So red flags are going to be certainly what I've already touched on, which is not knowing you're part of a buying group. No. So if you're not sure, that's a problem. If you're not sure what vendors your buying group works with, that's certainly a problem. Red flags and cost of goods could be a whole bunch of other things too. Do you constantly find yourself running out of things? Do you constantly find yourself having too many of the things? There's a common thing where if you've never ran out of something, you've probably ordered too much, period. Like you should have stockouts very rarely, but you should still have them. So that's one. You can always look at the ratio of price to cost at a macro level and kind of drill down from there to make sure that those ratios make a lot of sense. There's so many red flags in inventory management because it's just hard.
It's a lot of moving parts for sure. So should we right now, if we're part of multiple buying groups, what would that email look like? Do I email my rep and say, "Hey, can you break down my savings or tell me what buckets I'm not hitting?" Or what can someone do today that will help them clean up whatever GPOs they're part of?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think that distribution reps are meant to be advocates for the practice. They're meant to help practices sort through these questions. I bet you they would love to get that question from a clinic because it means that there's a level of trust there, and they're in the business of building that trust and giving that advice. Certainly, we help practices with that too, but this is not a plug for me. And every practice works with a distributor, and not every practice works with me. So they're a great point of contact.
Okay. I was looking at a lab contract the other day for somebody, and she said, "Well, if I become part of this group, I won't have to negotiate again because they'll negotiate it for me." And I was thinking, like, that's a nice idea, but how do we know? This is going back in our conversation. How do we know that the buying group gets the deals that an individual would get? Do we just
You mean
assume?
it's a better deal?
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
lot of trust in that, right? Do we just assume that they're out there fighting the good fight and they're gonna get us the lowest deal possible, but there's probably options for individuals to negotiate further, do you think? Have you ever seen that happen?
Let me put it this way: if you think about the distribution of outcomes that could possibly occur from worst to best, and then we put them on a chart, it's going to come out as a very, very, very steep bell curve. And the GPO is going to sit on the above average side with a very steep curve. We're going to call that positive kurtosis, I think. I'm not sure. Something like that. So basically, you could say a GPO that negotiates for their members is probably going to do better than almost all the practices negotiating by themselves. But there will be some practices to the right of that have negotiated a better deal. And there'll be a lot to the left of it that have negotiated a worse deal. But there still will be some. You brought up lab, which I think is very important because I think lab agreements are a little bit different than your manufacturing and distribution and, even practice software negotiations or uniforms. Like lab contracts are so customizable, and care teams have a lot of preferences
Mhm.
that someone negotiating on their behalf may miss some of the important points that are not price. That might be service, that might be breadth, that might be depth, that might be a startup fee, that might be an exchange of value in some other way. So those are tough. And our firm, to be sure, does not have a pre-negotiated lab agreement. And it's really because of that reason. I think it's really, really difficult to try to please the, 80% of people that would want to access that. I don't know who those 80% are because people that I meet, they all want different things. And I've certainly gone through and tried to negotiate those agreements, but I just find them to be a lot of work for not a lot of return for the members that we serve.
Okay. Okay. So keep on keeping on with that. How about, and as a consumer, this is something that irritates me all the time, is that, as an individual, this is my price. I joined this group. Now my price has gone down 20, 40%, week over week. Is there a way to get over that? Do I just say now I'm getting the savings and I feel better about it and not be so salty about last week when I wasn't part of the bargaining group? I know that's a bit of a weird question, right? But like, you hear it all the time from the private individual practices who are like, I can't compete with corporate. This is the price that I get.
Yeah, I mean, veterinary supply costs have gone up a lot, and there's some great data on that. And it keeps getting written about more, and we worry about what that means to the impact on the end consumer as they look at their options for how to spend that $1,000. Are they going to use it for care of their pet, or are they going to use it for something else? Like, it's a real worry. I don't think. Well, I guess that means buying groups are probably more important than ever.
Mm-hmm.
It does mean that suppliers to the veterinary industry, if you look at market structure, there are fewer suppliers that can span great geographies, and their profitability is based on being the supply constraint, not by incremental demand, whereas a small practice in Paducah, Kentucky is absolutely one of 40 to 50,000 that each spend is less than a fraction of 1% to the global market. And so the power is definitely on the manufacturer and supplier side. Now, that's kind of why GPOs exist. And it doesn't mean that it's a woe is me scenario. I couldn't be more excited about the power of an independent practice and what they can deliver in terms of authenticity, individuality. They have a story to tell. And I think that matters. I don't think I would think about it in a way of like, oh, I didn't have this last week, but I have it this week. I would just be focused on how do I compete in this environment and what are the tools at my disposal and how can I best leverage them?
So pulling that lever rather than sulking and saying, well, they're not going to give that to me. I don't want it.
I was just with a friend at WPC who runs a specialty hospital, and he was told by someone on his team that, macro-wise, visits are down year over year. And his response to that was, that doesn't mean they have to be at my practice. And I think that is a very bold statement, but I also 100% agree with them. You just have to do what you can do.
Yeah. We're all just like scraping by, right? Anything we can do to get those cogs lower. What haven't I asked that we need to talk about?
What do you tell people about buying groups? Like, what are the things that kind of get you guys going over at Granite Peak? I mean, you guys probably get asked about cost of goods all the time.
I mean, we're all about keeping those cogs low, right? So whatever you can do. I'm not a fan of paying for multiples. I don't mind being part of it if you're super loyal to one brand and they're not included in this one, but they're included in another one. But I would say 1, 2 max. But then utilizing it, right? I think that you have to be an advocate for yourself and to really get in there and know if you get a discount at Staples over Office Depot, well, then let's go to Staples, right? Like you kind of need to change up your behavior to make sure that you're filling, checking all those boxes and filling all those buckets the best way that you can.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a couple other like really easy things here. So before you even start having the conversation about buying groups, you probably need to know like, hey, what do you buy? How much do you use? Do you have duplicates on the shelf? Are there 4 different kinds of the same thing? And so understanding before you even get started on this path, you could probably be doing tighter inventory control, knowing how much you use, potentially leveraging technology. There's more ways to get that number lower than simply a buying group. And you can't just think that that is going to be the end all be all.
Look at you encouraging people not to buy more.
Don't buy more.
Don't buy more, right? Clean up what you got first and then go from there. That's really smart. And that is true, right? And if you can do those things together, then the sky's the limit, right? If we can keep our inventory tight and keep our prices lower, that's huge. Do you Okay, trick question. Do you think that if I get a lower price from a buying group, that then I lower my price to the client?
Oh, that is a question that's going to be up to the individual practice owner, and I am not going to answer that question for them.
Oh, okay. All right. I generally like to me, it's market dependent, right? If someone's in a numbers game, if I can get the volume, if I can lower it 5 cents and get more volume, great. If I'm so currently buying it and not complaining, then there's no reason to go lower, right? That's just better margins for me.
I think about it with X-ray a lot. The marginal cost of an X-ray is electricity. Now, the opportunity cost is time, but still, I mean, do you want that diagnostic result? Because the marginal cost, you're not buying $100 lab, test. So, yeah, I think it depends, and it depends on the category, and it depends on a lot of things. But sure, there's absolutely levers to pull there.
Okay, before we go, we have to talk about you being a bit of a gypsy. So, right, you don't have a permanent home. You just kind of like flip from town to town.
Yeah, my wife and I move every, call it 2 months on average, to a different city. We work out of an Airbnb. We visit family. I get to visit some practices, and we've been doing that for about a year and a half. And I don't think that's actually going to change anytime soon.
I love it. I love it for you. I love it for me for the stories. Any towns that surprised you? Did you just like it would be so fun to just like throw a dart?
So I'm from Minnesota. My wife's family is from the Northeast, and we have family in Florida as well. So we spent a lot of time out west because we're probably not going to live there. It's too far away from family. And we're not going to vacation to a lot of these towns because they're just towns, right? But everything in that high desert region, I think, is just awesome. I think it's beautiful. And as a Minnesota guy, it's definitely a climate that I never got growing up. So I'm always fascinated by it. So you get that kind of dry air and you get some cool evenings, but you also are on a mountain, and it's neat. So a couple of examples like Bozeman, Montana, Bend, Oregon, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Those are cool towns.
I love that. That'll be the nugget that people take away, right?
Yeah,
Travel
yeah,
plans.
be a nomad.
I love it. I'm a little bit envious. If people want to find you, if people have more questions, where do they get you?
Yeah, you can find me at LinkedIn. I'm Drew Bartholomew. You can visit our website. It's Vetcelerator.com. We make it really hard for you to spell because we're a marketing agency, and we like to make things difficult, which makes no sense. But it's a great place to go to learn more about us. You can read more about the writing on these same topics. We write a ton about that stuff, and we post it to LinkedIn. We have a newsletter you can follow, and we have a wonderful team. So hope to hear from some people.
Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. I hope that people came away with some good takeaways and will go back and have some actionable items.
Thanks for having me, Meg.
Thank you. Bye.